These three beats all have something in common. Each of those beats has a sense of groove, a feeling of movement that's mostly, in this instance, being propelled by the drums. And groove can be really hard to achieve when you're working in a DAW environment, and it's very easy to just hit the quantize button and get everything locked to a grid, when really, if we want groove, if we want that movement, what we want to do is be a little bit off the grid, but not so off the grid that it sounds out of time. So I'm going to try a different solution with a new tool from today's sponsor, Vocal Pockets. We're going to be using their tool Groovebuilders, which you heard in action on all three of those previous beats. I'm going to demonstrate how you can use them in your DAW to achieve a human feeling groove. Let's check it out. All right, so a lot of the times if I want to achieve groove, I'll play in the drums live, and it would go something like this. Set my metronome to 90 BPM, hit the record button, and let's see how this goes. Okay, I'm definitely not a human drum machine, but part of what we want to achieve here is groove. So it's okay to be a little off the grid. And you can see in moments like this, I definitely was off the grid. Sometimes quite a bit so. This beat is quite a bit early, right? So some of that push and pull is contributing to the groove, but some of it is not. Some of it's just not very clean playing on my part. And another layer of that is the velocity. For instance, if we just look at the hi-hat, it's not just about the rhythm of your playing, it's also about how you accent certain notes. So you can see this velocity kind of bouncing, but there was probably more of a natural way, a more controlled way of playing that velocity like a drummer. And since I'm not a drummer, I have trouble achieving that. So what do we do about this? We are going to use Groovebuilders from Vocal Pockets, and let me show you how you do that. I'm working in Ableton Live, but you can use Groovebuilders in pretty much most of the major DAWs. So first things first, let's just start with a basic hi-hat pattern. I'm gonna do straight up eighth notes and put them right on the grid. And 2 and 3 and 4 and. So no real groove there, that's just time, just eighth notes. And I've downloaded Groovebuilders with the Ableton Live groove files, but I've actually set that to be in my user library over here, so I have really quick and easy access. And what are these files, you might ask? Well, these are actually gonna work with Ableton Live's groove pool. I can open the groove pool by clicking here, and let's say I just want to try a couple of these out. I'm gonna look at the file name and try to find ones that are made specifically for eighth notes. If they have a T, it signifies triplets. We can throw that in there just to experiment with that as well. Let's find another one that's for eighth notes. New swing. We've also got genre info there, so R&B, that could be useful for sure. And let's just throw these in so we can hear the difference. Now, many times you might not have even interacted with this panel over here on the side. I find that many people are not using the groove pool in Ableton Live, myself included, until now. But now I can select these different grooves right here, and it will have an effect on this MIDI. We won't see it change just yet, but listen to it now. And some of it is more subtle. One thing that will be less subtle though, is if I go ahead and turn up the velocity, we'll definitely hear the velocity changes there. And if I turn on the metronome, which is giving us just straight time, now you can probably hear it a bit off the grid. But if you're still having trouble hearing what it's doing, I'll hit this commit button and we'll see the MIDI shift ever so slightly. So not only did it slightly change the timing, with just being slightly off in certain parts, some beats more than others, but we also see that velocity get adjusted. So what we have here is a subtle human feeling groove that we were able to do just as easily as it would be to quantize. Where with quantization, it's sort of this automated process to make things robotically in time. Now with Groovebuilders, this is an automated way to quickly get a human groove and feel. But that was just one of the grooves. And it's quite subtle. Let's bounce off of that really quick, undo what we just did, and select a couple more grooves so you can hear what they sound like. Again, if we turn the velocity up to 100%, the velocity in these grooves is actually meant specifically for a hi-hat feel. You hear we get a different accent there. I'm going to click commit again, and we can see that change, not only in time, but in velocity. So you can tell just by looking at those two grooves there that it can be very subtle, but we can also apply this to not just the hi-hats, but a full-on drum groove. So let me just start from scratch once again. No groove, straight eighth notes, and let's add a very basic kick snare pattern. So this kick pattern has a little bit of a bounce to it, but it's very drum machine-like because I just plugged it in right on the grid. Let's grab some of those same grooves from before. And in this instance, what I might actually do is duplicate this drum rack and have the hi-hats and the kick snare separate. This way, I can just have the velocity affecting only the hi-hats. Because like I said before, the velocity is really built for hi-hats in this situation. So on the hi-hat, we'll go ahead and crank the velocity and hit commit so we can see the change there. Perfect. And then in this pattern here, I'll delete the hi-hat, keep only the kick and snare, and apply the same groove just without the velocity effect turned up. Press that commit button so we can see the difference. And then we have a subtle change, a more human feeling groove. What's up folks, I'm here editing the video and I realized I really only showed very subtle examples of Groovebuilders, but I should point out there are actually these versions of the grooves that say delay on them, and if we drop those into the groove pool and apply them just like all the other ones, you can see that there is much more of a drastic change. Wanted to point that out just in case some of you were like, oh, it only does these little finer changes. No, we can do more drastic things here. Okay, back to the video. All right, so you can see how easy it is to start applying human feels to your drums. I mean, there's no way that I'd be taking the time to go in there and nudge each and every one of these notes just off, hoping that it'll sound good and human. This is sort of an automated way to do that. But we can go a little bit deeper with Groovebuilders, and let me show you how I did that in those beats that you heard earlier. All right, so in this beat, you're not just hearing one single hi-hat sound, you're hearing a few different sounds of shakers and one other hi-hat sound. And that's done by using a multi-sample instrument, but utilizing the velocity of Groovebuilders to tell Ableton Live which instrument to actually trigger so we can create really cool percussion parts. To do this, all we have to do is create a new MIDI track, Command-Shift-T. And to do this with Live's built-in devices, we can just use Sampler. You can also do this though with any other multi-sample plugin. Battery from Native Instruments is one. And here's what we'll do. We'll open up this little zone tab here, find some random samples for this example. Let's see what I have for shakers. Sure, those three are different enough. I'm gonna drop all three of those samples into this little pool here. And now I'm going to go over to velocity, right click, and for now we're just going to hit distribute ranges equally. Now if you're following along, you could probably have realized what this means is that from velocity ranges 1 through about 40 here, 42, it'll play that sample. 42 to 84, it's going to play another sample. And then the top end, 84 to 127, it's going to play a different sample. This gets really fun when we say create a new MIDI clip, line up some eighth notes over here. Actually, you know what? Let's do 16ths for this. And it sounds like they're all playing one sample because they're all set to one velocity. However, we do what we just learned how to do and use Groovebuilders. Let's grab this 16th note groove, crank the velocity. It's already cranked to 100. And suddenly it's switching between different instruments. Now that doesn't sound that great because we just quickly selected those samples, but you can also do things like rearrange how these are distributed. And we can even swap out samples. Let's, for instance, do it strictly with hi-hats. 3 hi-hats that sound not totally different from each other. Now, instead of just playing one stagnant hi-hat sound, it's playing a range of 3 different hi-hat sounds being triggered by certain velocities. And you can see the velocities jumping around there. And apply to taste. And that's exactly how this hi-hat pattern was created. Now peeling back the curtain here, you can see there's really 4 samples that it's bouncing between, only hitting that little tambourine on a higher velocity, and then bouncing between the shaker and hi-hat loops. What you can also do is get creative like I did here with this beat, and I actually took this multi-sample percussion track. It's got a groove on it right now. However, what I did is I ran it through one groove, recorded it as audio, and then ran it through another groove and recorded it as audio, and combined the 2 different grooves, which gave me this combination. And you hear the different percussion instruments because we're using that multi-sample technique. And when you put it in a beat, combining those 2 grooves, it sounds like that. I always like to take these tools and try to take them one step further. So instead of applying a single groove to a single instrument, now we have a multi-sample percussion instrument, and we've recorded it twice and combined 2 different grooves, one with these faster rolls and then one with more of a kind of steadier but still human feeling groove. One last thing to show you. So far I've showed you how to use Groovebuilders with MIDI drums, but as a lot of you know, I've been working a lot with using drums in audio across the timeline, and happy to say that Groovebuilders does also work with audio. So this beat typical lo-fi beat, but the drums have some groove to them. I built these drums as audio and I applied a groove to them. And if you see all these warp markers, that's exactly how Groovebuilders works with audio. Instead of nudging MIDI notes, it's applying warp markers to your transients. And we can even look at it in comparison because I saved, let's say, the kick pattern before I applied Groovebuilders. And you can see just how different they are. Let me go ahead and switch off the kick and snare, groove versions, and let me just put the straight ahead versions on here. And now, with the groove version, and like I said, that's just as easy as it was when we did it for MIDI. Go and select your groove, pick one of your grooves, and if you hit commit, you will see it adjust, just like we saw it switch right there. And like, I know some of this sounds really subtle, but hopefully from a musical perspective, you can understand that a humanized feel makes a real difference. And if I'm not able to sit there and finger drum out the groove that I want, having an automated process to achieve a human feel versus a more robotic feel is kind of a game changer, and it makes things a lot easier and a lot faster. It's also worth noting that I'm showing this in the context of drums in this video, but you can use Groovebuilders on any instrument. can use it with bass, melodic instruments, chords, etc. So thank you to Vocal Pockets for sponsoring this video. If you all do want to check out Groovebuilders, the link is in the description. Let me know what you all think and if you have any tips for achieving a more human feel and groove for your drums. Also, I'll be giving away one free copy of Groovebuilders over on my Instagram, where I'll post all 3 of these beats. All you have to do is comment and tell me which one you like the most. I'm going to run that for about a week, and I will write down below when that giveaway is closed. But head over to my Instagram, link is in the description. Check out Groovebuilders, link is also in the description. And thank you to Vocal Pockets for sponsoring this video. Anyway, that's going to be it for now. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been TAETRO. Have a good one.